News and stimulating talk. KVNU 610 AM and 102.1 FM.
KVNU News Time is 5:05. I'm Bill Walter with this news update brought to you by CBD7. A 22-year-old Tremonton man was killed in a three-vehicle crash this morning. The accident was reported around 7:50 a.m. at 9000 North US 91 south of Lauer Foods in Richmond. Utah Highway Patrol Sergeant Cade Brenchley said the victim was driving a passenger car westbound on 9000 North. At the intersection, the man allegedly attempted to turn left onto the highway and pulled out in front of a box truck that was traveling northbound.
We're still investigating, whether he stopped and then pulled out. And I believe there are some witness statements that will clarify that. But in either case, he didn't yield and turned in front of the box truck and was killed on impact.
The force of the crash pushed the victim's car into the path of a southbound traveling SUV that was sideswiped. Both occupants of the box truck and the woman driving the SUV sustained only minor injuries. Brenchley said the victim was not wearing a seatbelt. The man is reportedly from Tremonton but was living temporarily in Richmond. His identity is being withheld pending notification of family. The crash closed US 91 partially for several hours while troopers investigated and cleared the accident. KVNU News Time is 5:06. KVNU weather for tonight. Partly cloudy skies, overnight low in the upper 30s, and then a partly cloudy day tomorrow, mid-60s for the high. Mostly sunny Wednesday, upper 60s. It's been to 63 this afternoon. It's 57 right now at KVNU. KVNU weather brought to you by Northern Steel Building. Steel is stronger, more flexible, and more dependable than wood, masonry, and concrete, plus steel is often less expensive. See their work online at northernsteelbuilding.com.
People tell us CBD7 has changed their lives and the lives of their pets. Pets also have pain, anxiety, arthritis, old age, and other health issues. Love your furry family members? Don't waste money or settle for ineffective oil-based CBDs that taste terrible. CBD7 has the only clinically proven full-spectrum water-soluble formula with award-winning taste. Want CBD that works? CBD7 supports the best health for all your family members, including pets. Come in, learn about CBD, and try healthy, natural, safe CBD7 for free.
KVNU News Time is 5:07. A 29-year-old Hyde Park man has confessed to restraining a woman and choking her during a domestic dispute. Caden Peterson has been incarcerated since being arrested last September. Peterson participated in a virtual hearing in First District Court this morning. He accepted a plea deal, pleading guilty to one count of attempted kidnapping, amended to a third-degree felony. He also pleaded no contest to the remaining charges of aggravated assault and domestic violence in the presence of a child. North Park police were called to a Hyde Park home on a report of a domestic dispute back on September 17th. The victim told officers how Peterson placed a zip tie over her neck and tightened it to the point that she lost consciousness momentarily. He then grabbed her by the hair and dragged her into another room where he zip-tied her wrists to a piece of furniture and began punching her body and face. The woman said the abuse continued until a young child awoke and saw what was occurring. She had significant injuries to her legs, torso, face, and neck. The wounds included severe bruising and finger marks. A small patch of hair was also missing from her scalp. Judge Brandon Maynard ordered Peterson to remain in jail and complete a pre-sentence report. Peterson was ordered to appear for sentencing June 14th. He could face up to 15 years in prison. And an appeals court will consider the constitutionality of the first law in the nation banning transgender women and girls from playing on women's sports teams. The Ninth U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals is scheduled to hear arguments in a case that will have far-ranging consequences as more states follow conservative Idaho's lead. Idaho passed its law last year, and more than 20 states have considered such proposals this year. Bans have been enacted in Alabama, Arkansas, Mississippi, Texas, and West Virginia. Florida lawmakers passed a bill, and South Dakota's governor issued an executive order. KVNU News Time is 5:10. For more details on these and other stories, visit CacheValleyDaily.com.
Pristine wilderness can still be found in the West, where creeks run freely and historic apple trees still bear fruit. Maple Creek Ranch features breathtaking canyon views and opportunities for real estate development. 2.5-acre lots are now available with adjacent wilderness areas that provide endless riding and recreational possibilities. So find your piece of paradise just 35 minutes from Logan at Maple Creek Ranch. Schedule your appointment online at maplecreekranch.net.
Spring is the season to get outside and do a project or two. A good place to get started is Stevens Forest Products. Pick up bark, mulch, or compost by the bag for $1 or $2 less at Stevens, or buy it in bulk and save even more. Stevens is also your best source for flagstone, perfect for patios and walkways. Choose from 7 color choices. Pick up a few pieces or take home a pallet. Delivery options are available. Stevens is also home to over 5,000 in-stock railroad ties with prices beginning at $13.99. Stevens Forest Products, between Smithfield and Logan at 3277 North Main.
What a year! And 2021 just started. If you're like most people, good sleep has been a challenge. If you have sleep apnea and can't use CPAP, great sleep is even harder to come by. Fortunately, there's a treatment option that will give you the sleep you dream of. It's called Inspire. It works inside your body with just the click of a remote. That's right, a button. No mask, no hose, just sleep. Inspire is not for everyone. Talk to your doctor to see if it's right for you, and review important safety information at inspiresleep.com.
Welcome back to KVNU's For the People, Hour 2 of today's show. I'm Jason Williams. He's Bill Walter. The weather is beautiful. I don't know what just happened there, but
It's cloudy.
I almost sang a song. Something about the cadence of my words. The weather outside. It's
spring weather has inspired you.
But I have to tell everyone, if you're inside right now, this thing coming over the mountains from the east.
What is it?
It's
cloud?
Pretty ugly looking.
I can't see it.
I don't know.
I can't see it from my
Bill's
vantage point.
microphone cable's not long enough, but it's coming in. Kind of looks like it's a little south of Blacksmith Fork Canyon, coming in from the southeast. Hurricane weather, if you ask me. But otherwise, been a beautiful day. Puts me in a good mood. We've got some stuff to talk about. Not so great along these lines, though. Despite what was, at least in some areas of Cache Valley, a decent rainstorm yesterday, we are still in a drought. Governor Cox today, weeks ago, Governor Cox had issued a statewide state of emergency, which is kind of a formality in these situations. If a state knows they're going to be dealing with some sort of natural disaster of sorts, it gets the ball rolling on federal aid, which Utah relies on for fighting wildfires, for flood mitigation in other years. This year, it's going to be drought related. But we have some stories to talk about. DWR worried about fish populations. Should the water temperatures, if water levels get low enough, the rivers heat up, fish don't breed. Also, announcement from last week's meeting of the board at DWR that decides on the number of hunting licenses that will be available for each deer hunt season, greatly reduced coming up this fall due to drought. So we'll talk about how these things are connected, because it seems like they might not be. The governor today, though, to kind of drive this home, the governor issued an executive order telling cities, counties, state agencies, cut it out with the water as much as possible, ordering existing government entities to do no watering from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. That's a frequent restriction in July and August. I don't know that I've ever seen it in the first days of May.
Well, and quite frankly, a lot of people are not watering this early anyway.
Yeah.
Because usually it's very wet.
Surprisingly, some have been. I saw some sprinklers on some park strips along Main Street, Logan, of all places. Definitely unnecessary this time of year. And along those lines, Governor Cox didn't say this, but the Utah WaterWise people did. Utah WaterWise folks said, hey, if you see this happening, don't be afraid to call them out. If your city's watering, even if it's a golf course, if they're watering between 10 a.m. and 6 p.m., if they're watering more than a couple times a week, call them out on it. Let us know. Let them know. So they're taking this very seriously. We'll talk about how this might impact fish populations and hunting licenses later on in the hour. Again, some decisions made since last Thursday at various state agencies that could, it just kind of paints a very serious picture very early in the year when it comes to water levels and drought. So that's coming up later on in the show. Starting off here this hour, officially this week, the state enters into a new law in effect regarding telework. This is something that has been discussed, I think, for a couple of years now. It was 2 years ago that Governor Herbert and Lieutenant Governor Cox announced at a press conference the state's goal of getting, in the next 5 years, so 3 years from now, 30% of the state's workforce working remotely, if possible. Now, this was a goal, not a mandate. So they said they believed that was possible, and they were moving towards that goal for a couple of reasons. One, better for air quality, less people on the roads. Two, it would prove more efficient and cheaper for the state in many ways. And three, it would allow people not located in the Salt Lake Valley to work for the state. That's pretty difficult to do these days. There are satellite agencies here and there. Of course, every county, for example, has a Department of Workforce Services, which is a subset of the State Department. So there are options to work for the state in every locale in the state, but the jobs are very limited. Governor Herbert at the time said this would open things up quite a bit. It would allow people, he actually used Rich County as an example. So it would allow someone at Rich County to work, for example, at the Department of Technology, or even the State Tax Commission. If they were able to work remotely, they could work from home in Rich County and be employed by the state. So those were the goals as stated. And then the legislature decided to take this and run with it as well and passed a law. So the state government, the Utah state government, this week will take a major step, designating a lot of the workforce based on whether or not they have the ability as telework. This has been sped up a bit by the COVID-19 pandemic because a lot of them already are. In fact, the state believes at this point that more than 30% of the state's workforce has been working, quite a bit more, by the way, than 30% of the state's workforce, has been working from home for the last 13 months. One example provided by the state, as reported by Fox 13 News, Utah State Office Building has been completely redesigned to accommodate more teleworkers. Construction is finished there on the building itself, and it will house a number of state agencies, and some agencies are taking up a very tiny footprint within that state office building because so many of their employees are currently working remotely, and they believe that won't change. Now, obviously, this isn't being shoved down employees' throats. This has been done according to state lawmakers who discussed this during the session when this bill was passed to basically authorize this move for saying, from a legislative perspective, hey, we don't have a problem with this. If you as a state agency can have 40% of your workforce staying at home and doing the same job, go for it if you want to. So that law was passed during the legislative session, takes effect this week, starting today. And again, already seeing this happening in the state. This redesign of the state office building was actually planned 5 years ago, before anyone had ever heard of the coronavirus, COVID-19. Then the goal set by the governor, again, was for 3 years from now. Along comes the pandemic. All state employees who can are working from home. Well, for a time, all state employees are working from home. Then it became all state employees who could work from home, stay at home. And now, starting this week, it's going to be, as I understand it, state agencies surveying employees and saying, would you like to work from home? Now, there are going to be some requirements for this to work from home, and this is where we get back into the realm of how much broadband is there actually in Utah, because there is a requirement for broadband speeds and things like that. To be able to effectively work from home, you have to have a connection that's reliable and stable, in some jobs especially. In other jobs, any internet connection will do. But what they're finding, Sarah Bowl, Assistant Director of Utah's Division of Facilities, Construction, and Management, told Fox 13 News, she said, the solution of how the space might be used instead at the state office building is already being thrown at us. So the state is so confident that such a large number of their employees will not be coming back to the office, not because they're unemployed now, but because they are going to be working from home. They're already talking to Utah's Division of Facilities about this just redesigned, well, the construction was completed this year, early in 2021, but it was planned and begun 5 years ago. The state is already turning to Utah's Division of Facilities and saying, okay, this building's too big now. We've got all this extra space. What can we use it for? Again, pre-pandemic, this was discussed as an experiment by Governor Herbert and Lieutenant Governor Cox. Now here we are with Governor Cox, almost post-pandemic, a few months off from that, if things keep going as well as they have been here in Utah. And the state jumped way ahead. Throughout 2020, 8,000 employees went home and stayed at home. That's a big number. So again, this is all being exemplified by this new state office building, $20 million renovation 5 years ago when the money was appropriated and when the plans were exacted. The construction and renovation began, building finished now, but due to circumstances no one could have predicted, except maybe some epidemiologists somewhere who have been saying all along, eventually a coronavirus is going to get us. We better be careful and prepared. No one listened to that guy, though. Now this building's too big. So the state's considering, a couple of different things, maybe combining some office space with the Utah Division of Technology, but they also shrunk their workforce. They decided they could actually, the Utah's DTS, Division of Technology, they decided that they needed 30% of the space they were currently occupying. So it abandoned some dedicated workspaces for employees in favor of these unassigned desks because the number of people coming into the office every day was so low. Fox 13 reports the pattern is repeating itself throughout state agencies within that same Utah office building. So again, this newly, and I'm not faulting anyone here. I'm not saying the legislature shouldn't have spent the $20 million renovating the building. The whole point of this discussion is that the pandemic comes along, this experiment announced by Governor Herbert 2 years ago that still has 3 years to be achieved, if possible, the governor said at the time, became a reality, and then even more than what the goal was, 30% of the state's workforce went home, and many of them will be staying at home. And now all of a sudden, this state office building that just redone, just remodeled, beautiful building, planned grand opening in March, and now it's too big. Too much space, with departments using less space with so many employees home. The state is now asking the Division of Facilities to say, how can we use this space? Is there a way we can save money in some other area by putting people in this building that's now unexpectedly very empty because so many state employees will be staying in a telework world? Bowl of the Division of Facilities said, now we understand how successful teleworking can be on a scale we never thought possible. They're experimenting with all kinds of things like desk sharing, where someone doesn't have a dedicated desk, but rather a storage space at that desk should they for some reason need to come to a physical office for a period of time, meaning that each desk could house 2.5 employees. I don't know how you get that 0.5 in there. But interestingly enough, for the state to fully adopt this and adapt to this, there are going to be more renovations needed. Proposed $245 million investment statewide to renovate and build a number of facilities across the state. So this doesn't mean the state's bill for buildings and facilities is going to be reduced anytime soon. Not at all. What it does mean is that some of the plan, what it means is the plan was thrown on its head by COVID-19. And the state office building, the first example of that, built for a need. It wasn't excessive. In fact, during the debate, when the money was appropriated for this renovation, there was criticism from some very conservative lawmakers. They were spending too much money and renovating the building too well. Argument, the counter at the time was that, no, we're building exactly the office space we need for the number of employees. That argument won out. The money was spent. No criticism there. But COVID-19 comes along. This experiment in teleworking becomes a reality across the board. And so many employees will not be coming back to the office. Now the state has too much space in that newly renovated office building. It's going to be interesting to see where this all settles. And it's not settled yet. I wouldn't be surprised if the state finds that too much teleworking is a problem, but that's going to take a year to figure that out. I wouldn't be surprised if the state finds that in some areas of state agencies, for example, teleworking works great, in others not so well. So it's going to take a while to really figure this out. But it's already saving the state money. It's already reducing the number of people on the road. Not by enough, but by a significant amount. And I guess it's just one of the silver linings, few silver linings of the pandemic, which, of course, doesn't outweigh the losses of the pandemic. But really interesting to see how this is playing out. Again, Governor Herbert's experiment announced 2 years ago to have 30% of the state's workforce working from home with 3 years from now suddenly became a reality, and a reality that's probably not going away. And suddenly the state has too much office space at the newly renovated state office building there on Capitol Hill. 753-5868. Listener wants to know if there's any word on them renting that office space, because that would, quote, be primo office space just outside of downtown Salt Lake. That is, honestly, I don't think you would have to wait long for people to lease that space if the state ever offers it up. But we'll see. No announcement on that yet. We'll be back right after this.
This is Dr. Red, chiropractic physician with Red River Health and Wellness. Are you suffering with fatigue, brain fog, headaches, intestinal issues, weight gain, and you haven't been able to find any answers?
I've constantly been fighting with my weight and thyroid issues for more than 25 years, and none of the doctors in 25 years have ever been able to explain to me what Hashimoto's is, what it means to me, and how to manage it.
Red River Health and Wellness can help you.
Today, my life is like the minute I get out of bed, I hit the ground running. I'm ready to go. I want to see what today is going to bring, what adventures I'm going to have without pain and with all the energy to do everything that I want to do.
Our goal is to teach you and educate you so you know how to manage your condition a lot more effectively, and you know what to do and what not to do for the rest of your life. With our satisfaction guarantee, you have nothing to lose.
Call Red River at 855-55-RIVER to schedule an in-depth consultation absolutely free. All appointments can be done remotely by FaceTime, Skype, or phone.
Visionary Homes would like to introduce you to Archibald Estates, a brand new community in Tremonton with townhomes starting in the low 200s, single family and active adult homes starting in the upper 200s. You're sure to find the perfect home for you and your family. Just minutes away from schools, parks, golfing, restaurants, and grocery, yet tucked in the lush green fields of Tremonton. Visionary Homes understands what you want in a home. Visit buildwithvisionary.com to learn more about Archibald Estates in Tremonton. Visionary Homes, built for living, built for you.
Honorary Forest Ranger Betty White here, lending a hand to my dear friend Smokey Bear. Because for years, he's only said,
only you can prevent wildfires.
But there's a lot more to say. Like if you park your car on tall, dry grass, the hot exhaust pipe can start a wildfire. So keep the animals safe, especially the cute shirtless one. Go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
Welcome back to KVN News for the People. A comment from a listener we'll wrap this conversation up with, because it was a great question. I don't know specifics about this. A listener said they had heard that some state agencies like the Department of Natural Resources, Division of Wildlife, others like that, because I've heard this a few times, that they had actually said to their employees, you're back in the office by June 1st, or you're back in the office by the end of May. I don't know. I haven't heard specifics about that, but I guarantee there will be some agencies that do that. When it's safe to do so, the governor has to sign off on that, and he hasn't yet. But there are going to be some agencies that say, no, it doesn't work for us. Telework doesn't work for us. Natural Resources is a great example. I don't see how they could have, maybe their office staff, their administrative staff could work from home. But the majority of DNR's employees are out anyway, not in the office, but they're not going to be able to work from home, telework. There are going to be some agencies that can't do this. And the empty spots at the state office building is that's just, I think, 3 or 4 state agencies that are housed there. But it's interesting to think about nonetheless, because, again, this newly renovated building that some were arguing was too small, some were arguing was just the right size when the legislature funded it. Now it's too big because so many employees are going to be staying home. But again, to the caller's point, that's not going to be every agency. Some state agencies are not going to be able to pull this off and be effective. Others, maybe more so. But it'll be interesting to see. It's going to take us a year, maybe even 2, to really sort this out and see where everything lies. But the governor's goal of 30% of the state teleworking in 3 years from now, Governor Herbert's goal from 2 years ago, well, we already got there, and it might not be changing. We'll see. On the other side, State Representative Republican Candace Pierucci making a big splash today with a 5 a.m. interview on CNN talking about last weekend's GOP convention and the booing of Senator Romney. What she had to say, we've got the audio coming up after these headlines with KVNU's Bill Walter.
Thank you, Jason. KVNU News Time is 5:31. The news is brought to you by Mount Logan Laundry. In response to ongoing concerns about extremely dry conditions, Governor Spencer Cox issued an executive order forbidding irrigation at state facilities between 10 a.m. and 6 p.m., requiring that sprinklers are shut off during rainstorms and making sure landscape watering systems are operating efficiently. The executive order also encourages local governments to implement similar water restrictions on public landscaping, urges irrigation companies to delay the start of the irrigation season, and asks all Utahns to reduce water use by taking shorter showers, converting turf to water-wise landscaping, and replacing appliances with water-efficient models. In the press release, the governor said last year Utah experienced one of the driest and hottest years on record, and we anticipate another tough drought year ahead. State government is committed to doing its part to conserve water, and we encourage all Utahns to use this most precious resource wisely and sparingly. The executive order is effective immediately. And officials say a person died while competing in the first part of the Ironman 70.3 North American Championship in St. George over the weekend. The Ironman group confirmed the death Saturday around 6:20 p.m., an hour after the race ended, saying an athlete was showing signs of distress during the 1.2-mile swimming portion of the race at Sand Hollow State Park. The person's identity has not yet been released. Further details were not immediately available. KVNU News Time is 5:33.
Make laundry a snap with the large load washers and dryers at Mount Logan Laundry. Rather than 8 to 10 loads at home, get the job done in 1 or 2 with their 55 or 80-pound washers and 80-pound dryers that are perfect for sleeping bags, comforters, and other big items. Mount Logan Laundry has free Wi-Fi and drop-off service, plus they're open until midnight. Mount Logan Laundry really is the cleanest spot in town. Find them at 5th East and 9th North in Logan, or in Brigham City on the corner of 1st East and 7th South.
And a 24-year-old former student teacher has been arrested and charged with sharing child pornography over the internet. Caden Strong was detained April 16th and booked temporarily into the Cache County Jail. According to an arrest report, Logan City police officers received a cyber tip alleging Strong was using a popular messaging app to download and share illegal material. The files were of children between 11 and 17 years old. The preteens were all nude and engaging in sex acts. Investigators tracked the child porn to an IP address in Smithfield where Strong lives. They served a warrant to the apartment, collecting multiple cell phones as evidence. KVNU weather, partly cloudy tonight, low in the upper 30s, partly cloudy tomorrow, mid-60s for the high. It's been to 63. It's 58 right now. For the latest news, visit CacheValleyDaily.com.
Adams Wealth Advisors have helped thousands of people create financial peace of mind. Understanding your family, job, hobbies, and goals is how Adams Wealth Advisors earn the long-term trust of the individuals they proudly serve.
This is Craig Adams. At Adams Wealth Advisors, we are here to help you receive peace of mind, whether you've done a lot of planning or a little planning. Count on our team at Adams Wealth Advisors for honesty, professionalism, and integrity.
Visit AdamsWealthAdvisors.com. That's AdamsWealthAdvisors.com to schedule a time with an advisor today.
If a tree falls in the woods and no one is there to hear it, does it make a sound? Scientists claim it doesn't. But if your wife trips over that tree stump in your backyard one more time, does she make a sound? Oh, Larry! Oh yes, she does.
Stump removal, tree trimming, and pruning. Call Hall Tree Care. They have the best equipment, the most experience, and a cleanup crew that is second to none. Hall Tree Care, 760-6587, 760-6587.
Join us for the Grand Cinco de Mayo celebration, Wednesday, May 5th from 11 to 7 p.m. at Willow Park in Logan. Get ready for an explosion of Mexican culture, including taco fiesta, folkloric dancers, Mexican singers, games, prizes, mariachis, food trucks, and more. Come celebrate Cinco de Mayo at Willow Park in Logan, Wednesday, May 5th from 11 to 7 p.m. Sponsored by Cytiva. Now hiring. Visit Cytiva.com/careers.
Welcome back to KVNU's For the People. As we've been discussing, it was quite an event Saturday, the Utah State Republican Party Convention. And if you'd like to see speeches made by everyone from the Attorney General to candidates for party chair, etc., all of those are on the Utah GOP's Facebook page, and I've linked to some of them on our own Facebook page. It was an organizing convention, which means internal party decisions. And again, about 2,100, I think, was the total count, roughly, of delegates in attendance, which is about half of the delegates that are out there. About 50% showed up on Saturday. And by the time things got to, as we've been discussing, the vote on this proposal to censure United States Senator Mitt Romney for voting to impeach President Trump twice. This was, the second impeachment, Romney's sole vote. This was a proposal that was put forth by two names that, if you've followed Utah Republican Party circles for a long time, you'll know well. Don Guyman and former member of Utah GOP leadership Phil Wright put this proposal up. The backstory, the rumor mill at least, is that many people tried to stop it, including outgoing leadership, those who were stepping down from their posts in Utah GOP leadership. But it went forward, and as I mentioned already, the vote was not successful in depending on how you look at it. There were about 90 more delegates than those four who were against censuring Romney. So the proposal failed in the final vote. But before that, the booing, there were some shouts of traitor and things like that. Many Utah lawmakers were quick to point out, in attendance on Saturday, were quick to point out that by the time this vote happened, the delegate count had dropped from 2,100 to about 1,400. And that's backed up by the number of votes that were cast, which totals about 1,400. 711 for censure, 798 against censure. The measure failed, and then everything wrapped up. And this was late in the afternoon, so that's why some delegates had dropped off after the leadership elections. Then the responses started, and that's where things got even more interesting. But I wanted to focus on one response that actually got some attention on CNN. Obviously, Romney getting booed is going to attract the national media. Lawmakers here in Utah, Republicans, were quick to point out it was just a handful of people booing and shouting traitor, not even a majority of the 1,400 or so delegates that were still there late in the afternoon on Saturday. But as Adam Brown, BYU political science professor, pointed out, the vote was 47% of those delegates still around in the late afternoon on Saturday voted to censure Romney. And I've already discussed my thoughts on parties censuring lawmakers over a vote. There are a lot of reasons to censure a lawmaker, and sometimes parties have to do that. But I believe, again, it should never happen over someone voting their conscience, even if you really disagree with the vote. I think parties censuring their elected officials who belong to the party over votes kind of undermines the entire point of electing representatives. And if you don't like the representative, you can primary them, run against them in the next election. That's how this is supposed to work. Party censuring over specific votes could quickly become parties doing nothing but that, and lawmakers afraid to cast any kind of vote based on conviction for fear they'd be censured by their party. So I don't like wading into those weeds in general, whether it's Republicans or Democrats, but many still felt Romney had stepped out of line with his vote to impeach Trump, and thus you saw what played out. And if you haven't seen it and would like to, there's plenty of video out there, but I wanted to highlight this. This was, and if this last name sounds familiar to you, it probably should. Utah State Representative Candace Pierucci, who is a Republican and also the youngest member of the Utah State Legislature right now, appeared on CNN over the weekend, invited on the CNN show called New Day to talk about this, to talk about what it was like being there. And she spoke for just about 10 minutes is all. We've got about 4 minutes of her remarks here. If you'd like to see the whole thing, I've linked to it on our Facebook page. But it was really thoughtful how she expressed her reaction. She was there on Saturday and what she saw in the crowd. And again, if the name sounds familiar, it's because, well, there was another Pierucci that was a frequent guest here on our show. Andy Pierucci, who is actually Representative Pierucci's husband, was the head of the USU Republicans for years and made frequent appearances here on our show in his time at USU. And he also tweeted himself saying he was proud of his wife for appearing on CNN to make these remarks. Here's what the youngest representative in Utah's legislature, Republican Representative Candace Pierucci, had to say on CNN's New Day show about the booing and name-calling during the GOP convention Saturday.
What was it like to be in that room and hear the boos for Mitt Romney?
Well, it was incredibly appalling and frustrating, and I want to just make it clear, though, that as you listen to that playback, you know, there are almost 2,000 people in that audience, and not everyone was booing. I mean, it was maybe a quarter of, on the high end, a third of the people there. There was a lot of us standing up, showing our support and giving our applause to the good senator, and it's really, really incredibly unfortunate the way those delegates behaved.
I get that it wasn't everybody, but we're talking about Utah and we're talking about Mitt Romney, right? I mean, he won, you know, his election in 2018 by a lot. We're talking 31% he won by. This is a state that wasn't always as pro-Donald Trump. So what does it say that in Utah at this point that Mitt Romney's barely surviving a censure vote?
You know, I think it's important on that vote to also note that was at the end of the day where all the diehards stay through. We weren't allowed to eat at the convention. But to your point, I think obviously our party is going through an identity struggle in finding where we are and where we need to go as a party. And I was incredibly proud of Senator Romney and how he handled that. And I just want to say that our party is big enough in Utah to have both Senator Mike Lee and Senator Mitt Romney representing us as Republicans for the state, and it needs to stay that way. We in Utah have obviously a strong red state history and Republican leadership, but it's a diverse range of Republicans. We have our Governor Spencer Cox, who is leading the charge on compassionate conservatism, Congressman Curtis, to Congressman Owens and Congressman Stewart. So we've always had this broad scope of conservatism in our state, and I think it needs to be clear to those people there's room for both.
You say it's big enough, maybe in Utah, but what about nationally? When we see Liz Cheney, whose leadership position in Congress might very well be in jeopardy because she voted to impeach the former president and continues to speak out against. You see the censure is going on all over the country for people who are standing up to the big lie, to the idea that the last election was somehow stolen. So are you really convinced the party's big enough at this point, or has the party chosen?
Listen, as the youngest member of our state legislature in Utah, and probably one of the youngest in the country, and as a millennial, I have hope that we absolutely will continue to maintain relevancy. However, I think what's critical is that we as a party recognize we're not a party of a person. We're a party of principles, and that we need to get back to the idea of opportunity, individual liberties, entrepreneurship, upward social mobility. That's what we need to be running on, and that's the messaging we need to have. And the different solutions that come from that, fantastic. So I am hopeful that we are just going through some growing pains right now, but that at the end of the day, people vote with their heart. And I think you'll see if Senator Mitt Romney chooses to run for re-election, that he'll be re-elected in Utah.
You know,
Pierucci appearing again there on CNN's New Day show, reacting to the failure of the censure vote on Saturday in the Utah Republican Party organizing convention. Measure to censure Mitt Romney for his impeachment vote failed, 798 to 711. About 1,400 delegates of the 2,100 credentialed that day still on hand for this vote. The booing reference there actually happened earlier in the day when all delegates were still there during Romney's speech. Every member of Congress got up and gave a little address and an update, and the booing came then. Pierucci also had something to say about what's getting overshadowed by all of this that I think is actually the most interesting thing that happened at Saturday's Utah Republican Party convention. The fact that no candidate for state party office up for election were the chair positions, vice chair, secretary, etc., all leadership of the state party up for re-election. Former chair now at this point, Derek Brown, had decided not to run for another term. And so a lot of endorsements were thrown around by big-name people in Utah, from Governor Cox to members of the legislature, and even Congressman Rob Bishop endorsed one of the candidates for chair. None of them won. In fact, the candidates who won every office, vice chair, chair, secretary, every office was treasurer. The candidates that won were those not endorsed and oftentimes not heard of. These weren't big, famous people within Utah Republican Party circles. But even more noteworthy was their age, something that Representative Pierucci spoke to during the CNN interview.
I would disagree. I would. As someone who was there listening to those booing, I can tell you the people on the stage who ended up being in party leadership were not the ones booing. And the overall attitude was absolute surprise of people who were just totally floored by the behavior of some delegates. But when I looked across to see those booing, there was a specific demographic, and it certainly wasn't millennials who were doing that.
What was the demographic?
I mean, from where I was sitting, it was older male individuals who were booing. And, you know, they can boo. That's their way of showing their displeasure in his vote. However, I would say the more civil approach would have been to just show their frustration at the ballot box. And my problem with this is booing and screaming are not tools for change. And we're seeing this across the spectrum where for whatever reason, we as humans and people and Americans can't engage in civil dialogue anymore. And we have got to get better at it, because that's the only way you find common ground and solutions.
Rep. Periucci said that, speaking still of the age of those elected into party leadership, younger than all of those running that were endorsed by some big-name officials in Utah Republican circles here in Utah. They were, many of them, surprises. They were not expected to win by the old guard, if you will. And Periucci said that makes her feel hopeful that millennials and those younger than millennials, remember, millennials at this point can be in their early 40s, but she said millennials and those younger than millennials, she believes, are steering the party away from this more divisive version of the party and towards a party that can talk about solutions to problems. And she said that the elections for state party leadership on Saturday made her hopeful about the future of the Republican Party nationwide. So if you'd like to see Representative Candace Periucci's full remarks via the New Day show on CNN, this happened on early this morning, 7:10 Eastern time, to be honest with you. Periucci got up very early for this interview. I've linked to the interview from CNN's New Day show on our Facebook page. Those are some highlights there, though. And that was, again, Republican Representative Candace Periucci, the youngest member of Utah State Legislature, speaking to what happened on Saturday at the Utah GOP convention. We'll be back with more of KVNU's For the People right after this.
Summer is just around the corner. Don't crank up your AC unit before getting it serviced. Advanced Heating and Air Conditioning is the team you should call for quality on-time service. If your system needs replaced, think York. York has the best warranties in the business with affordable financing options. Call Advanced Heating and Air Conditioning at 752-7272 or stop by their showroom west of DI. Online at advancedheating-ac.com.
Comfortable until you are. Advanced Heating and Air.
In the Army National Guard, family means everything.
Our parents, they were really supportive that all 5 of us would join. I got my education because of the Guard. I got to travel a little bit and experience a whole different culture. It helped me get my job, it helped me pay for my house.
Serving part-time in the Army National Guard instills pride that you and your family will share. Visit NationalGuard.com to learn more about part-time service. Sponsored by the Utah Army National Guard. Aired by the Utah Broadcasters Association and this station.
You've been putting up with a dirty, dusty wood stove for years. Why haven't you changed it? Go to Advanced Fireplace and Stove in Logan. Look through their showroom for ideas on Quadra-Fire pellet and wood stoves and Heat and Glow gas fireplaces. They have several demos in place so you can see firsthand how your project will look. And you can trust the pros at Advanced Fireplace and Stove. They'll do the job right. Advanced Fireplace and Stove. 752-7272. Online at advancedfireplaceandstove.com.
Hey guys, Dave Ramsey here. Every day I get calls from people in all walks of life who want the same thing, a plan. Whether you're 18 looking to do college the right way or 80 and want to retire with dignity, the Ramsey personalities and I are here to help. We'll give you proven strategies for your life and your money right here on The Ramsey Show.
Dave Ramsey, evenings on News Talk KVNU, 102 FM and 610 AM.
100% of Utah is in drought. Reservoirs are low, and wildfire risk is dangerously high. Do your part to save water. Fix leaks, take shorter showers, run full loads, and wait to water landscapes. Get more information at drought.utah.gov.
Welcome back to KVNU's For the People. Getting warm out there. Starting to feel like late spring, as it should. To be honest with you, we've still got quite a bit of spring left. It's about mid-spring, but I like to think of summer as early as I can. Already putting out all of the summer yard equipment. It's just beautiful out there right now. So I hope everybody's finding a way to enjoy it. As the pandemic winds down in Utah, of course, still a lot of encouragement to get outside and take care of your sanity, spending some time in the hills or at least near the rivers if you get a chance to do that. And the weather is just playing along. It's been great. So, but with it getting warmer, as we mentioned earlier in the show, Governor Cox today issuing a state executive order for all state agencies, and this does affect counties and cities as well, to implement earlier than is usual water restrictions on watering. No watering between 10 a.m. and 6 p.m. And the governor didn't specifically ask for this, but the Utah Division of Water Quality and the Water Wise folks did ask for this, telling residents, hey, there is nothing wrong with this. If you see your city watering a lot, more than maybe twice a week, or if you see your city watering in the daytime at a golf course even, let them know. Call the city and say, hey, the governor said no watering, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Now, of course, this just affects government agencies, buildings, things like that. No restrictions that I've heard of, at least, from any cities throughout the state on residents. But they're already getting the message out that this is going to be a year of watching how much we water. A lot less water in the waterways already, and that could be problematic. Something outside of how this is affecting yards and watering schedules and things like that. 2 announcements over the last 3 days regarding outdoor recreation and water. You can read this at cachevalleydaily.com, but drought could negatively affect trout populations, and that could be noticeable this year in Utah's waterways. The Division of Wildlife Resources Logan Fish Hatchery Manager Gary Howes told cachevalleydaily.com's Rod Bohm that they're currently monitoring the drought situation and will make appropriate changes if needed. He said, we found out the U.S. Forest Service is closing Tony Grove for a while, so we will stock up there before they close it, and some after they open again. That's for some necessary repairs on the road and more up there. And he said we can rework our fish planning schedule when we need to, keep fish in all the places where people like to catch them. But he's Frank Howe, a university research liaison with the Division of Wildlife Resource, said that they are very worried that low water levels in the rivers and streams around Cache Valley and in the canyons could see a big reduction in trout population. He said, I'd say the biggest concerns from an ecological perspective are that low water levels could impact trout populations in lower Logan and Blacksmith Fork rivers. In fact, it's very possible that this year Blacksmith Fork and portions of the Logan might actually run dry. If some parts of the river run dry, it will be tough on the fish and other river wildlife. For trout, cold water fish, the problem starts as water levels drop and the temperature of the water warms up. It basically halts their breeding process. So if the water gets too shallow, even if the river doesn't actually run dry in parts as it bleeds out into the valley, the warm temperatures shut down the breeding cycle and the trout don't spawn. So he said when there's less water in the river, obviously the river is shallower. Shallower heats up faster. Warm water holds less oxygen than cold water, and trout have a harder time breathing in warm water, so they don't breed. Fish can even get stranded in isolated pools, which shrink as they get warmer, and he said that's something we might see this summer. This comes just after the Utah Wildlife Board voted last Thursday to approve a decrease in the number of general season permits for the 2021 deer hunt in an effort to maintain healthy deer populations across the state. The board approved 74,000 roughly general season buck deer permits for 2021, and that is about a 6,000 permit decrease from 2020. Out of the 29 deer hunting units across the state, 17 saw the number of general season deer permits decrease from 2020 to 2021. The reason for this, of course, is that Utah's drought, a primary factor in recommending a decrease for the general season. The board said with the drought that, this makes sense. Very few drought years in Utah recently, which has impacted positively survival rates of deer. The hunting license numbers could go up, but with drought coming in, the survival is going to go down, meaning the number of licenses needs to go down. And Utah Wildlife Board member Donnie Hunter, who oversees the southern region of the state, acknowledged the drought was already hurting Utah's deer population, said they perhaps issued too many hunting permits in 2020. And so that's why the drastic decrease in hunting permits for 2021. Utah currently experiencing, the Division of Wildlife Resources said, its third driest spring season in recorded history. That comes after the record set in 2020 which was an abnormally wet season after 2019. So just back and forth. But wildlife managers said these steps are necessary to keep everything healthy. So expect fewer hunting permits this fall, and also possibly expect fewer fish in the rivers, at least in some of those lower favorite fishing spots as the drought continues. So we'll keep you posted. Again, no restrictions announced so far on personal water usage when it comes to yards and things like that, but Utah Waterwise saying expect them this summer, and you can avoid them, actually, restrictions from your city, county, or even the state by just implementing water-wise practices right now to keep your water usage down. Some tips on that at the Utah Waterwise website. I've linked to that on our Facebook page. That is our time for today. Thank you for tuning in. Dave Ramsey is next here on KVNU Logan.